Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I got a community guideline strike on my Apocalypse Now channel for medical misinformation. And so, I want to talk about how abusive, wrong, and even evil this is on YouTube's part. And this isn't about me. I'm not angry about it. I was a little bit hoping this would happen because it will open the door for me to say what I was going to say. And so the first part is I'm going to play the audio of several parts of my video. Let me read this part first. Hi, Apocalypse Now, Pockets of the Future. I'm going to have to change that because apparently people are not being able to search my regular channel because of that. So I'm going to change that to POTF. Our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think it violates our medical misinformation policy. We removed the following content from YouTube: Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, comedians Kid, Fauci, Taiwan, Bengals, and more. We know that this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place for all. If your content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal and we'll take another look. Keep reading for more details. So I appealed and they didn't rescind the strike. And so I've had these kind of strikes before. And they're usually, this is the type of strike it is. You share something that is sort of a viral video that they deem as everyone who shares it gets a community guideline strike. It's happened with COVID multiple times. And the video I shared was a doctor who I believe is German and also from Taiwan. And he said the Taiwanese people or government is going to rescind their whatever it is. They're going to, break their deal with Pfizer and demand their money back, something like that, right? Because there was a princess who had she dropped like a fly. She had a health crisis, and 40-year-old princess, and they believe it has to do with the vaccine, right? And so there was this video that this guy put out. And again, I'm not saying that I know that to be true. And there's a video this guy put out, and I think that video was the reason for the strike. Also, there was a second video in which another doctor, so these are just both doctors, at least that's who, that's what they, the video itself said they were. And this doctor said Fauci wouldn't let them do autopsies or told them not to do autopsies, right? Now, both of these videos, I said I can't prove or validate anything they're saying, verify anything they're saying. I say it over and over again. I make some light jokes because it's a comedy channel. And I just put the video out there. So this is very important. This is part one of YouTube being abusive. And they're saying that I am making people unsafe, right? Let's go back to what it said here. And it says, YouTube is a safe place for all. If your content breaks our rules, we remove it. It's saying that my video somehow made YouTube unsafe. By posting that, it made YouTube unsafe. So remember that because it's going to come back up. I'm going to quiz you. But anyways, so let's go to the clips. I'll play the audio of the clips in which I say these things about these various doctors, right? I say it before and after the clip. And, I say, I'm not saying this is true. I don't know it's true. I can't prove it. I don't know anything. You'll hear what I had to say. Anyways, there is a video here of the guy. And I have no way to verify who this is or what he's saying is true. I mean, it's just, I'm not validating it, but this is what he said. Okay, so after I played the clip of this guy talking, this doctor, I said this. This happened. Can't verify this, can't say that the guy, is who he says he is or is, I don't know anything. Other than what I showed you, you know as much as I do, right? Let's move on. Me saying you know as much as I do is very important. I'm going to bring that back up in a moment. But then I showed the other clip of these two doctors, one of the doctors saying Fauci told people not to do autopsies. And again, This is what I say here. Okay, so Fauci said don't look for, don't do autopsies according to this guy. I don't know what his proof is. I don't know what, they say he's a doctor. So again, I'm not validating this, but it's starting to leak out everywhere, right? I'm going to show you something from MSNBC and one of their hosts who now has... So this is sort of going to be like a Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, and then I'm going to do probably a second one today here on this channel. But let's make the mildest point here of what YouTube did. Again, not what I received, what YouTube did, right? In terms of this community guideline strike. So there was these two clips of what I now know to be legitimate doctors who, I didn't do research on it, and I just, whatever it is, right? I can't validate or verify any of these things. Let's just talk about that for a second. YouTube said, again, we want to make this a safe place. Let me go back here and find the original thing here. And it says here, we know that this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place for all. So their goal here is to keep you safe, right? And that's something, I worked in treatment centers, and, you work in these places that are like a psychiatric ward. They'll say, oh, we're just trying to keep you safe. Oh, we're just trying to keep you safe, which is a gaslighting phrase, right? And in terms of the vaccines, the people that are supposed to keep you safe are Pfizer and Moderna and the companies that put out the vaccines, because that's the ones who, they're doing the testing, right? They're providing the information. And there's been all this stuff, I'm not going to do a deep dive into it, but that they haven't been upfront with the information, right? There's been articles about this, and there's been stuff said by the FDA and various, organizations, and, all of it. But the people who have a financial incentive in getting these vaccines out and getting them into people's arms, right? Because this is for-profit medical companies. This medical model, which, I've suffered from. I've had issues with the allopathic medicine model. It's hurt me in different ways. I don't do, the pharmaceutical drugs, like the side effects, and, even I can't take Advil or Tylenol or anything. I get, migraine headaches, and I just have to live with them. I've been taking this turmeric stuff, and I do other things, but I just have to live with them because I took Imitrex for a while, and that had real bad side effects, and I've taken various over-the-counter, pain relief, and it makes me feel worse. And so I've had issues with other things to do with the allopathic medical model. It's a for-profit medicine model where, in terms of keeping you safe, they keep you sick, right? The medical model keeps you sick. The immune system is everything. And when COVID first came out, I said, it's time to boost your immune system. And the allopathic medical model, the pharmaceutical drugs, don't have anything that naturally boosts your immune system, that supports your immune system. Of course, there's supplements and there's herbs and things you can do, but not in the allopathic medical model. In fact, it has lots of drugs and things that take down your immune system. That's part of the side effects. And so keeping you sick means that you're going to doctors, which is profitable for the medical community. It means your insurance companies are doing well, right? Because you're a good customer and they can raise your rates and all these things. And it means the pharmaceutical companies are doing great because you're constantly, having to take some of their medicines, and their medicines might have side effects, and then you have to take other medicines and you develop other conditions. You take something for this and it has a side effect, and you have to take something for that. Next thing you know, you're on a perpetual customer, right? So it's a customer-based, for-profit medical model. People know this. Like I saw this with my parents as they got old, as they got older, and they went to their death phase. And, they keep you alive until all your money's gone, until you're, that's how this medical model works. You're a paying customer throughout your adult life. And before COVID hit, there was a couple articles that people sent me that I covered that said younger people, it's like 18 to 20, 20 to 40, had like, it was like, half of them had a chronic medical condition already. And like a third of them had 2 chronic medical conditions. And when I put this out, so many young people said, yeah, I have this, and they started listing their health issues. And I was told by a sort of a healing person, like a chiropractor who I knew to be a good healer, that, he said that, this generation, this was 10, 15 years ago, isn't as strong as previous generations, right? There was issues, and, who knows if it has to do with the internet or what in modern life was making this generation more susceptible to physical issues, right? And this is like 15, 20 years before COVID. But it's a for-profit, customer-based system. We all know that. Most people should know that. And testing of their medication to make sure their medication is safe, if YouTube's goal is to keep you safe, is the pharmaceutical companies. And the last big thing that they're known for pre-COVID is OxyContin. They released these drugs, these opioids, and now, of course, fentanyl, that are highly addictive and wrecked people's lives. And, their medications have side effects. There's an article, and I don't know what it was, Vox or one of those, Wired or something like this. And they said that there's 200 medicines that have, as a side effect, suicidal ideation and or depression. 200 of them, common medicines, that prescription drugs. And so if you're saying if YouTube's goal is to keep you safe and that we're supposed to trust only the words of the pharmaceutical giants that have a stake in their, it's a for-profit business, right? And so that's gaslighting, to say that we're trying to keep you safe by not allowing any other types of opinions to be verbalized. Because what happened here with this particular situation was that me as an influencer, I said I can't even validate if what this guy's saying is true or who he is, because I get these things, people send these things to me. A couple of people had sent me this. I think my wife sent it to me, the thing with the doctor from Taiwan. And then somebody else sent me this thing with these doctors saying Fauci said no autopsies. And I said to both of them, I don't know anything like this. You guys know as much as me, which means you have to make your own decision, that you have to, take into this consideration all this information, and then the information that, is the official story and whatever else and make a decision for yourself, right? Which is ultimately everybody's responsibility and job. But YouTube is saying you're not capable of doing that they have to prevent the sharing of some of these videos of alternative opinions that may or may, be right or wrong or whatever they are, and to keep the community safe, which is gaslighting, right? That's what they're saying, but it's not accurate. YouTube's gaslighting me and all of you by saying you aren't able to handle this information, that we don't think you have the mental capacity, in a place called YouTube, right, where it's about you, not them. Like, I called this thing ThemeTube a while back when YouTube was, becoming more, when we started to put out authoritative news and all these things. This is about you. It isn't about CNN. It isn't about Pfizer. It isn't about, it's about personal, individual people expressing their opinions and their, experiences and things, which they wouldn't allow people to do, right? Because I had all this information about how, I got over COVID and how I dealt with COVID. I had some issues, post-COVID. I was pre-diabetic. I had, heart palpitations and things. And I've had COVID, I had Omicron, and I had whatever the latest thing is this past November. And then with each one, I had a regular heartbeat and, things, it's something where everyone in the truth community wants to blame the vax only. Oh, it's the vax. Well, I didn't have the vax and I had some of these things, right? And let's go into this woman here. It's a good segue into this woman here from MSNBC. So this is Yasmin Vosagayan. Wow, I can't even come close to pronouncing that. Opens up about health scare. One of my viewers sent me this right when I was starting to. I wanted to finish this video before I made dinner yesterday, but I had a little headache and a bunch of stressful things are going on for me to do with the Sahaj Marg Heartfulness system as well. Like I got a really dose of bad news about that. One of my people who was bummed at the direction that the master of the system is taking it. I do this meditation, and it's just it's a holiday. It's like a celebration of the first master, the spiritual master's birthday, and things have gone so south with the organization. It's like almost ridiculous, right? And I got something that was kind of upsetting, some information I had, which I'm covering on my journey series, right? And so I was getting all that. I had a little bit of a headache, and I just couldn't get this video done. So I said, I want to do this properly. And so I want to include this here because this is more of a Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, but it applies here. So this woman says this.
I know from my Twitter feed that many of you have wondered why I have been off the air for a little while. Well, I have been dealing with a little bit of a health scare. On December 20th, I began to feel chest pains, and they waxed and waned over a period of 10 days. I wasn't quite sure what.
So this is over a month ago.
To make of it, but as they continued to get worse, I started to think something was actually wrong. It was December 30th when I finally went to an urgent care and was told I had reflux. I didn't really buy it, but I was relieved it wasn't my heart.
So why wouldn't you buy it? She didn't buy it, right? They said she had reflux, so she goes to a place and they misdiagnose her because I know because I saw this yesterday. They misdiagnose her. And she didn't buy it, right? And so that's, the medical model. Because if you understand this, there are, in terms of medical errors, there's 250,000 deaths a year. And that's conservative because she dies. They're not going to consider this a medical error, issue. But they misdiagnose you. I mean, we're talking about keeping people safe, right? YouTube wants to keep people safe. And the medical model misdiagnoses people. Right, you're trying to keep people safe, right? You're trying to keep everybody safe. And so she was misdiagnosed, and she had something more severe.
My body, though, was pretty certain not to believe the reflux. The next day, on December 30th, I woke up with severe pains both in my chest and in my left shoulder, and it was like a tightening in my chest. When I took deep breaths, that got worse when I was laying flat. I knew enough at that moment to understand that it could mean is the key word here, that I was having a heart attack, especially because it was happening in the left part of my shoulder.
Exactly. Could is a big word. YouTube. Could is important because we don't know. And that's what I've been pretty clear about, that I don't know. Like I don't pretend to be an expert or a scientist or something in things I'm not. Like, I have my own opinions and I make my own decisions. But could is a big part of everything, right? It could be a heart attack.
I want to remind you, I run 7 miles 3 to 4 times a week, or I did.
She's a runner.
Yoga. I don't eat meat.
She's a yoga. She's a vegetarian. Well, kind of.
I drink occasionally. Not right now, though, because my doctor tells me I can't. Aside from probably not getting enough sleep and working too much, I'm a pretty healthy person. But on that day, I was anything but. My husband drove me to the emergency room, and from there, the nightmare that has been my January began. I was diagnosed with pericarditis, inflammation.
Okay, so she had pericarditis.
The lining of my heart brought on by a virus, a literal common cold.
Okay, so this is debatable, right? How do they know that? Like, how do they know it was a common cold? Because you've had the vax. Well, let's move forward here, but I'll show you that in a moment.
I also had fluid around my heart that had to be drained or else it could hinder the beating of my heart. I was hospitalized for 4 nights and transferred from a local hospital to NYU Langone here in New York City. On January 4th, I was finally discharged after doctors drained the fluid around my heart, and I bounced out of the hospital. I couldn't get out of there fast enough with the hopes I was on the mend. But that was not the end. 3 days later, I was readmitted when I felt a flutter in my heart, like a butterfly. It was inside my chest. They determined I had developed myocarditis.
In 3 days? since you were diagnosed with pericarditis? You had myocarditis the whole time, right? You didn't develop it in 3 days after they diagnosed you with pericarditis. So first she was diagnosed with acid reflux, and then she didn't believe them, and so she ended up having some more health scares. They misdiagnosed her with pericarditis, a second misdiagnosis. They told her it was from a flu or whatever. I mean, unless they're saying that between the time they diagnosed her with pericarditis and 3 days in the hospital, she got worse and had myocarditis, right? And then they're going to say it's a common flu kind of cold that settled into her heart, right?
Inflammation of the actual heart now, the heart muscle. I remember being shepherded through the emergency room and wondering, is this it? It wasn't, thank God. Instead, I spent 5 more days in the hospital where they ran a battery of tests, adjusted my meds, and made sure nothing else was fueling what was happening. And in fact, in the end, it was still just the cold that was doing all of this, that had caused.
Now, that's just not believable, right? It's not believable they could figure out it was just a cold that was fueling all of this, because we already know this. There is a link between myocarditis, pericarditis, and mRNA COVID vaccinations, right? Which they are testing for. This is the CDC. And they're saying they're not sure about it because, well, the companies have a financial incentive to delay the testing. I'm not saying they're doing that, but they do, right? Because people are still taking these medications, the vaccines and things. And so they're saying that this could be this myocarditis and pericarditis have really been reported. When reported, the cases have especially been adolescents and young males, more often after the second dose. So this is a side effect. We know this. It's out there. It says it. There's multiple articles about it. All these people, they're looking into it. Both Moderna and Pfizer are looking into this. Moderna's developing another shot that they give you directly into your heart to fix heart issues, which again is more money for them. And so this is something where she has had the vaccine. And so as a doctor, you would consider that a factor because people are developing myocarditis and pericarditis with the vaccine. It is a symptom. It is a side effect. It is a cause. It might not be the cause. Like, I don't know. I can't, But to say it's a common cold or some sort of a bug that she has, a flu, that causes it, right? She's announcing this like it's a fact. You understand this? And it's not a fact. They don't have any scientific proof that this common cold or virus or whatever she got caused it. The doctors told her this, but that doesn't mean it's true. They haven't proven it. And it would be irresponsible not to say, well, there is a connection between myocarditis and the vaccine. They can't say it's that either. They couldn't just say it's the vaccine, the doctors. They could say, this is my diagnosis, sure. They're saying it's the virus, sure, she can say that. But she's announcing it like it's fact. And is that safe, YouTube? Is she making the YouTube a safe place by saying that? That when she's saying this is what the doctors told her and saying it like it's fact, it was all caused by this virus. Well, no, there's, other possibilities, including the vaccine. I'm not saying a virus can't cause myocarditis. I'm not saying COVID is possibly responsible, because COVID could be, right? Just like the vax could be, just like this virus that they said. I had some irregular heartbeats, and, my wife had them. We had just COVID. We were not vaccinated. My son got the last version. He didn't get the first version when we had it. He's in the same house. He didn't get the second version. He's, 20 years old. He got one day he was sick with the third version. And he said, what's up with the rapid heartbeat? Right? And, it went away. It just, with my wife, it went away. For me, I had issues with it, which I've dealt with and seem to have, it seems to be, a thing of the past, right? For me. But I had it post-COVID. So I'm not saying what she's saying or the doctor's saying couldn't happen. I don't know. Just like she said, right? before. I don't know if it happened or not. But having the vaccine is at least a factor. It's something you would look into because people who have gotten vaccinated and boosted have developed myocarditis as a side effect. And they're, all searching and researching this. And so is this keeping people safe, YouTube, like her saying that? Because they misdiagnosed her twice, right? And that's what it sounds like, at least once, where they said she had acid reflux. And then they're saying, oh, it's just a cold that you have.
Just the cold that was doing all of this, that had caused all of this inflammation in and around my heart.
Yeah, but again, come on. Just come on.
And this thing has continued to wax and wane. And the hope is I'm on the mend and on the other side now, but will be on medication for some time to come. It's not the most fun, but alas, I am getting older, and I need to admit that. One man who has helped me through all of it and shepherded.
Okay, so she this video I'm watching on YouTube, is this people keeping people safe on YouTube? That she's not saying it might be vaccine related when there's so many people dropping like flies, so many young people. I mean, I cover this all the time, and I can't say they're all vaccine caused, but certainly it's something where, you're introducing something new into the population, the world population. We're seeing young athletes have cardiac arrest. I mean, there was the thing that happened with, the stuff to happen with Damar Hamlin. And like 2 days later, there was a flag football player, a girl playing flag football in a high school in Las Vegas. And she had cardiac arrest. They didn't revive her. She died. And then an 18-year-old, like 3 or 4 days later after that, had cardiac arrest, another athlete. So there are people, I've been documenting this. So many people died suddenly. And to pretend that this doesn't exist, is this keeping people safe, YouTube? Are you really keeping people safe, or are you gaslighting people? Like, what are you doing here? She's 44 years old. So, considered a young person, certainly younger than I am, but, she's fairly young to be having a condition where, myocarditis has, I think, a 50% chance of dying within 5 years. Long-term prognosis usually good with a 3 to 5 year survival ranging from 56 to 83%. And so, around, she's got a 50-50 chance of living past 5 years. I guess that's what you're saying, or, whatever I don't know what the range is, why it's 56 to 83. It should be, whatever it is, right? But, she's a young person, and her lifespan has just been drastically decreased by this condition. Okay, so more on this gaslighting and feeling safe before I get into the more severe stuff, right? First, I just want to say that I really like YouTube. YouTube has been great for me as a, whatever it is, right? I mean, people in the so-called truth community will say, well, it's part of the beast. Yeah, well, we're all part of the beast. I mean, there's corporate giants that are, part of the beast, but we're all part of it, right? We're all part of the system that I call the beast, right? The overall system. But in terms of my experience with YouTube, my overall experience, well, first of all, as a viewer, I am a, avid YouTube watching person. I, get entertainment videos, things that crack me up, things that I like. It's just based in entertainment, right? I watch a lot of animal videos get recommended to me. I like animal, whatever it is. I wanted to be a naturalist when I was a kid. My wife also. So we send things back and forth to each other, things like that, entertainment things, comedy things. And as a farmer, as a person who's a homesteader, I have learned so much from YouTube videos, how to fix things, how to do things, right? All kinds of things like that, instructional type of things. Also health-related issues. I've been doing various acupressure. I'd done acupuncture earlier. I had some acupuncture done on me over the years. And I was aware of acupressure and EFT, these types of things. And somebody sent me a video when I said I was having these heart issues about how to move the energy in these various acupressure points. And it works so well. Like I can feel the energy moving. I do a meditative energy type of situation with the Sahaj Marg meditation that I do. And so, I know how to move energy and feel energy in my, system. I can't describe it really. But it works so well. I found other videos. One, I often get sore throats because I, talk so much here. I talk 2 hours a day into this microphone. And, I've had sore throats on and off. And I did something that helped with that. And there's some other points somebody recommended to me because of the headaches, liver 3 and small intestine 4, which are, points that I was aware of before. And I just, sometimes you learn things and you do them, right? And then, you forget about them. Also for neck pain, which my wife and I have had, on and off. I found a good video for that. All on YouTube. I watched one yesterday. There was something from Dr. Berg on cataracts, which, I was diagnosed with early cataracts and, how to get rid of them. And that was very interesting. I watched that yesterday. So as a viewer, I really love YouTube. I've experienced good things from YouTube as a viewer. And then also through my channel, which has been even better for me. I've supported my family based in this channel. This has been my job since, 2014, 15. I've had this channel since 2007, and I've been able to make enough money to, support my family, whatever it is. I started to look at it as a job when my family and I were in India, and it was a bad situation. I was going through a divorce and all these things. And YouTube helped get me through that. I got a lot of support from people on this channel. This was my support system during that, tough time. And I eventually met my now wife, who's been, just a blessing from God through this YouTube channel. So many good things. I can't even list them all. Have happened through YouTube. And I've been, very positive about my relationship with YouTube. As a partner, it's not the greatest partnership. The community guidelines, the ever-changing community guidelines and things and various things. But, I like the analytics program. There's things that, I like the graphics. I mean, there's things, I like how efficient the video software is. And YouTube's recommended many good videos, even though, the algorithms sort of work against me as a so-called truther. In terms of as a viewer, they've recommended things that have been very helpful for me. A lot of people in the so-called truth community hate YouTube and, as part of Google, and they feel like the censorship and all these things. But, they live in they're a corporate giant in a world where, it's a beastly system. This is an evil empire. I mean, it is, that's how I see it. And I think I'm pretty much right. I've talked about that, right? We know, how this all works. And so they have to deal with all that, just like all the rest of us. And so, I'm not saying they're good or bad or whatever. It's just the reality we all live in. And so, I give people a pass, even the people who control the system. Not a pass, but I'm understanding because the nature of keeping an evil empire going, which I talk about quite frequently. But one thing you can say here is that YouTube says they're trying to keep people safe. This is the first part I'm dealing with. It gets worse because this is, what they've done here. And again, it isn't to me, it's about them, right? It isn't, oh, I'm a victim. No, it's about what does this say about YouTube, this community guideline strike, right? And to write to me and say, we're just trying to keep you safe. We're just, we want to keep this environment safe. But to people who are so-called truthers that are called conspiracy theorists, and people who are anti-vax, who haven't, wanted to take the vaccine, this was not a safe environment, right? And I'm going to demonstrate that. So first I'm going to show you a bunch of clips. This is a montage. It's going to start off with them condemning and demeaning so-called conspiracy theorists, where they're basically saying we're the scum of the earth, right? And that's not safe. That's not safe. It's not, appropriate behavior. And then I'm going to show you all the things that they said about the vaccines that were wrong, that turned out to be wrong, including from their president, our president. Then I'll show you how they reversed themselves, Bill Gates and other people, then changed their story or said that, these things weren't true and they didn't work as good as they promised. And then Pfizer themselves admitting that they never did any testing to see if COVID could be prevented by the vaccine, their vaccine. And then I'll meet you on the other side. So this is a long montage of those things. So as I have said in so many videos, that the term conspiracy is a word that is created because there are conspiracies. Lots of them. People conspire. People do it every day. Two or more people coming together to screw over another group of people, to conspire against a person, a group of people, whatever it might be. Conspire to make money, conspire to commit crimes, conspire. I mean, so many nefarious activities start with some sort of a conspiracy, right? And what they've tried to do is demonize people who point them out and say that you have some sort of mental illness. In fact, the DSM-5, the people who make up it's the manual full of psychological conditions. There is this push to put paranoid conspiracy theorists, people who are into conspiracies, into some sort of pathological psychological diagnosis, that you are considered insane for being a conspiracy theorist. And yet we know that most of everything, businesses, and I mean, there's so many laws out there that are supposed to stop conspiracies, right? Conspiracies from happening. But we have whole groups of people. We have the CIA, we have the NSA, we have the FBI that works with covert intelligence, psychological operations, all things that are conspiracies. They work on being liars and lying. They're professional liars, right? I mean, you can look at the whole law profession, lawyers, as being professional liars, right? Master Chargy, the third master of the Heartfulness system, he said that a lawyer is a licensed liar like a doctor is a licensed killer, right? And that was an interesting, somebody who was very mild in his speech to say something like that, right? Because people conspire, people rig the system, people work to profiting themselves and their family and their particular group, their particular demographic. This happens all the time. Countries conspire. There are alliances, right? The UN conspires. There's all these conspiracies that happen. But even more so, there are movies, and I just have a few old ones here. This is from, old. I mean, I could find so many more. There are TV shows and movies, most of them, that have a conspiracy, oftentimes the government conspiring against its people. It's a reoccurring theme. And so you see this conspiracy theories being at the center of entertainment. Hollywood is doing this, right? And so you're promoting conspiracy theories. In fact, people have this tendency. People have these tendencies to be what's called conspiracy theorists, to, think that there are conspiracies going on. Sometimes they're wrong, but it isn't my fault. It isn't your fault, because people are liars, and the people who run the system have often profited off of conspiracies. And so the fact that we see conspiracies and we're open to seeing conspiracies doesn't make us mentally ill. It makes us reasonable. It makes us rational. And I'm not saying there's not crazy. There's crazy. There's craziness in the truth community. There's lots of crazy, right? But there's crazy everywhere else as well. There's people who, are just go off the deep end, who are just, they are actually kind of paranoid. That's true. There's people like that. And there's stupidity. There's just the QBs. There's lots of stupidity in the truth community. Lots of stupid ideas, lots of things that are just stupid. Lots of crazy and lots of stupid. But there's lots of conspiracies that are real conspiracies. There are lots of liars and people in power who are lying. And there is withholding information, and it's not our fault. You guys are liars. I mean, you guys being the people who control the system itself, the politicians, the media. You guys lie to us all the time. Corporations, you guys lie. Corporations make money off of inside information and, lying and deception and fear baiting. And I mean, think of the advertising world, how they get people to buy their crap. And then there's the food that poisons us. You can't trust the food, right? You have to read the ingredients, which I talk about how exhausting it is to have to check up on these liars and see if the stuff they're putting in the food and everything else, because we have to read the ingredients on everything. We can't trust you to just come out and tell the truth. We can't trust the people who run the system to come out and tell the truth. And so we're not the crazy people here. We're not the problem. We're not the people that need to be silenced. We're not the people that are causing, whatever, right? We might be a threat to the liars in the system. I mean, a system that exists on lies, a system that needs lies and deception to keep itself going, where debt is wealth, an economic system. Of course, yeah. The truth is kryptonite to that system. So, yeah, and I say this all the time. I mean, if we woke everybody up, which has been a stupid goal, the system would collapse because the system, when you get to the bottom of it, is not a good, functional, healthy, natural, God-based system. But you're demonizing all of us, right? You're taking a few, crazy people like Alex Jones and, all this stuff. I've said this already. You're taking all these, these groups and you're demonizing all of us the same way you're saying, well, we're demonizing a whole group based on a few bad apples. And this is happening in real time, like I said. All right, let's go to some more documentation of this.
A new report finds 1/2 of COVID deaths among adult Americans could have been prevented since early last year if the vaccination rate had reached 100%. That's about 319,000 lives lost. The findings come from researchers at Brown University, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard, and Microsoft AI for Health. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates warned of the threat from large epidemics more than 7 years ago during the Ebola outbreak. In his new book, How to Prevent the Next Pandemic, he looks at what went wrong in the COVID response and the lessons that can be applied going forward. And has fueled these conspiracy theories. How do you deal with conspiracy theories?
A popular conspiracy theory.
Republicans and conservative leaders are out there instead spreading insane, offensive, and false conspiracy theories. Be human. They're conspiratorial. Some of these insane conspiracy theories or Satanists or a part of a grand conspiracy to hurt you and your family. What exactly do you think is going to happen when smear artists invent a deranged conspiracy theory about Hillary Clinton?
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
You mentioned attacks on the early 90s. Right. Do you still believe there's a vast right-wing conspiracy?
Don't you?
I'm asking you.
Yeah. It's gotten even better funded. They brought in some new multi-billionaires to pump the money in. And look, these guys play for keeps. They want to control our country. Senator Sanders and I agree on that completely. They want to rig the economy so they continue to get richer and richer. They could care less about income inequality. They solve their consciences by giving big money to philanthropy and, getting great pictures of them standing in front of whatever charity they donated to. But make no mistake, they want to destroy unions. They want to go after any economic interests that they don't believe they can control.
So, that is the land of unconfirmed reports.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Did it have anything to do with your visit?
No, I'm sure it did.
This deranged conspiracy theory inspired, quote, Jewish business people, got him suspended from Instagram again last night. And alarmingly, there are a lot of people out there on social media taking Ye's side on this. NBA star Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets, he recently tweeted a link to a widely debunked anti-Semitic movie full of lies and just junk. He was not apologetic at all at a Saturday press conference.
There's things being posted every day. I'm no different than the next human being, so don't treat me any different.
The next human being doesn't have 4.6 million Twitter followers, Kyrie, at a time of rising anti-Semitic violence. I do not know what is missing in these people's hearts or their lives that they feel the need to smear individuals or groups, to ignore the humanity of these other people. But in one way, Kyrie Irving is right. He is no different. He might have a larger platform, but in this moment, we all need to consider how we talk about our fellow humans.
all part of conspiracy theories. Like reporters are living in a world of conspiracy theories.
The crowd are people who believe in some conspiracy theories that are so
to investigate Joe Biden's son, Hunter, who once worked for a Ukrainian energy company. It's important to note there's no evidence of wrongdoing by either Joe or Hunter Biden. President Trump is again insisting today that reporters should dig into a conspiracy theory and
that Hillary Clinton engaged in a purposeful conspiracy designed to keep him out of the White House in 2016.
Jones for his wild conspiracy theories.
Was shared with conspiracy theorists, and why do these people, these conspiracy theorists, or
president and spreading vile conspiracy theories about the attack on the husband? Here we are a week later, and the conspiracy theories are already spreading like wildfire to Trump.
Thank you for joining us. Let's start there. What are some of the conspiracy theories you heard in Houston?
A BBC investigation has revealed how conspiracy theorists are spreading falsehoods.
Because they're helping us understand America's relationship with the truth. Debated a new conspiracy theory.
And so that's how they demonize people who don't agree with the official story. And it's widespread, and I just spent, a little bit of time. I mean, I could find this all over the internet. If I had the time to search, I could do hours of compilations of all the times they say conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorist in a derogatory term and link people who don't agree with the official story with all kinds of bad behaviors and all the rest of it, right? So what you just watched is from a video on my other channel, Apocalypse Now channel, that has now gotten a strike, right? And there's our friend Yasmin talking about conspiracy theorists, and now she has myocarditis, right? And this has happened so much, somebody demonizing people. But again, I want to show you there's more coming. That's just part of this compilation. But from what you just watched, and I have a master's degree in counseling. I worked as a counselor. I worked in clinicians with adolescent sex offenders and outpatient clinics, and I did diagnosis, and I ran diagnostic tests, right? I wrote up psychological assessments. I know how to, I know about these things, right? I'm smart. I know about stuff like this, right? Not because I was educated, but I have, the ability to read situations. I have, I'm a dyslexic person. I see things as a whole. I recognize patterns or whatever it is. And so if YouTube's saying they want to keep you safe, well, how does anybody think people who are anti-vax, based on what you just watched, and so-called conspiracy theorists feel? And what you're going to see, because there's more coming. Do we feel safe? Is this keeping us safe? Is this, it's as many as 50% of the population and, viewers, right, on YouTube. So many so-called conspiracy theory videos I saw before I started making my own on YouTube for years. It was stuff that was up on YouTube, and it was okay. YouTube didn't have a problem with it. You could say pretty much anything in terms of a conspiracy theory, and YouTube promoted it, and it helped to build the platform. So much so that YouTube, when they got pressured by the Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, who was okay for her to be a conspiracy theorist, which I just showed you, it was okay for her to talk about how they were conspiring against her husband, right-wing people, but not, Democrats. No, Democrats never conspire. Pharmaceutical companies never conspire, right? And so everyone's a conspiracy theorist about their own victimization, their own, people are out to get them. But when you question certain legitimacies of the system, and when they brought up that term fake news, YouTube had to change their algorithms because you'd be searching for a truther channel and a truther video, and they would show you CNN, which sucks, right? Which we don't like and we don't want. They had to change their algorithms for more authoritative news to give you something you weren't asked for as a customer. How is that keeping people safe? You're saying, and you're demeaning people saying, oh, you don't want to watch what you're searching for. You want to watch this instead. We all have access to CNN and MSNBC and Fox. We can all watch those things. We don't have to come to YouTube for that, right? Why are you recommending that? So many people watch my videos, and then after they watch my videos, Fox News video shows up. And they could watch Fox on their own. We don't come to YouTube to watch Fox. I have YouTube TV, and I have Direct TV. I can watch Fox News or just regular TV, right? I can watch all those things. I mean, on, most of those things. On regular TV, I can go to the airport and watch CNN, right? It's readily available. And they turn out to be wrong all the time, and they give bogus information. So how is this keeping people safe? Like, I'm just talking about emotionally safe by demonizing a group of people and, making them the villains. How does that make them safe in society? Do you feel safe about verbalizing your opinions about things because of, this kind of conduct, demonizing conspiracy theorists, making us all look like we're cubies who, are just dopes, right? And I covered that earlier in that video. Before this segment, I showed you my clip of the Charlie Brown stuff with cubies, right? The waiting for the great pumpkin, calling everybody, crazy cubies and all this stuff, people who follow Q. I mean, that's how they've demonized people. When, it's much more sophisticated, there's much more sophisticated viewpoints in the so-called truth community. So YouTube isn't a safe place for us. And again, this is a large population. It isn't 1%. It's at least 30%, right? Even more. And so let's go to the vax stuff now. This is the things, Jojo Magoo, and things that were said about people who are anti-vax, and also an out-and-out lies and false claims by Jojo Magoo, our president, Joe Biden, and other people. Let's watch that.
It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask.
You shouldn't cut anti-vax people out of your life. They could be dead tomorrow. Spend time with them, call them, get in the will.
Screw your freedom. The latest data that confirms that we're still in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Continue to be among the unvaccinated, are among the unvaccinated, are unvaccinated. The unvaccinated, there are people who are dying and who will die who didn't have to. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, do it now. Do it now. It could save your life, and it could save the lives of those you love. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer. This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. My message to unvaccinated Americans is this: we've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. As I speak to you, millions of Americans are still unvaccinated and unprotected. And because of that, their communities are at risk, their friends are at risk, the people that they care about are at risk. But if you're unvaccinated, you're not. And you're putting yourself, more importantly, maybe from your perspective, your family and your friends at risk. Ultimately, those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
You are not allowed to infect anybody just because you think you've got rights that are delusional, of course. This delusional, evil idea, you got to identify those people and bring them out into the open so you know who they are. If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
At this point, staying unvaccinated is like wearing a Yankees hat to a Red Sox game. You're probably going to end up in the hospital, and it's your own damn fault.
I was so worked up over the weekend about this fucking Aaron Rodgers of the NFL. I don't even know where to begin with that story. I mean, this fucking guy, I don't watch football. Sorry, I'm not a big fan. I know the guy's a real good football player. That's why they put up with his bullshit. If I ran the NFL,
he's going to be a Hall.
You came across as a national embarrassment.
He's talking to Aaron Rodgers. You came across as a national embarrassment.
There is no other way around it. It was the most embarrassing performance of Aaron Rodgers' career.
Jeopardy and possibly putting your teammates in jeopardy, to me, is selfish.
I'd give Aaron Rodgers some advice. It would have been nice if he'd have just come to the Naval Academy and learned how to be honest.
Southern California, where as of yesterday, we started giving the vaccine to kids aged 5 and up. Finally, our kids will be able to go to.
Let's see.
Woo! Woo! Oh.
I'm not vaccinated.
Oh,
where are you going?
Oh.
I take horse pills.
Yeah, we have to wait for them to be vaccinated because they are selfishly a endangerment to other people, including staff people here. So while we're all hopeful, and I join the president in being hopeful that we can reach a place where it is safe for people to be. What is this, the honor system? The honor system as to whether somebody has been vaccinated? Do you want them breathing in your face on the strength of their honor? So let's just see. Let's just see. I mean, again, this is about science and governance. And science and governance, we have a responsibility to make sure that the House of the Representatives chamber is not a petri dish because of the selfishness of some not to be vaccinated.
Teach people common sense. You need to get she doesn't even know what else to do to get the people of her state to get smart and listen to the facts and get vaccinated so people don't die. It's like that simple. Is it not the people who choose to remain unvaccinated right now who are causing all of this?
It is selfish at this point to not get vaccinated.
If you can be vaccinated and you refuse to, that's a selfish act. You're putting other people's lives and health at risk. You should get vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
The new cases in COVID are because of unvaccinated folks. But it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks. It's the unvaccinated folks that are letting us down.
The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind. Because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind.
I think I just passed a house with a Halloween yard decoration that was a bunch of skeletons burning an anti-vaxxer at the stake. I'm gonna go.
And so there it is. It says anti-vaxxer right here. Took me a while to see this. That's why I'm pointing it out. And it's got a bunch of skeletons sitting around a campfire roasting a skeleton anti-vaxxer. This is supposed to be a fire, which is pretty effed up. Like, it's really effed up, right? And what my wife pointed out was, what did these guys die from?
Not that Halloween is a contest, but they want it.
It's the platforms like Facebook.
They're killing people. I mean, it really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
What he's saying there is that posting words on social media is killing people. And they've made this like the worst thing. That you're a bad person for posting things that aren't verified by the official story. This is a guy who droned children. He ordered the deaths of children in Afghanistan when he ordered a drone strike on an imaginary enemy to distract from a failed war and a disastrous withdrawal. And so there are horrible things being done all the time. But now they've made posting things on social media one of the worst ones. But it ended up not being true, right? He demonized anti-vaxxers and people who were posting things on the internet, and ended up being him who was the liar and the person that was putting people in jeopardy.
Effects or reactions would be most common from these vaccines?
Well, generally, the most common reaction is what you see with most any other vaccine.
a sore arm, a little bit aches. You might feel a little bit fatigued and down for 24 hours to 36 hours at the most. A small percentage of the people might get a fever that would last for 24 hours. You take a Tylenol, you can take care of that without much problem. The safety of severe adverse events is really very good. In the 30,000 people in the Moderna trial and the 44,000 people in the Pfizer trial, the one we're talking about today, there were really no severe adverse events.
They didn't list any side effects. I mean, that's, a sore arm or, these things. I mean, he's talking about just how you feel after you get the vaccine, not 2 months out or 3 years out or 5 years out. But now we know that there are multiple side effects, which I'll get into after we go through these things here. We know that there is admitted to side effects, things that they're investigating, and things that are related to people dying. And one of the ways we know that they were being deceptive and not saying what some of the side effects were, because they never showed you commercials that came from the pharmaceutical companies themselves. It was social influencers or media personalities or Jojo Magoo. It wasn't Pfizer posting commercials, because if they did that, they would have had to list all the side effects, which we still don't know what those are, right, in terms of what they discovered. And it's still being studied, right? It's not even like they're fully, it's fully been vetted by even the pharmaceutical companies themselves. So this was all lies, right? Again, they lied to people and said that this thing was safe and safer than getting COVID. And, this turned out to be not true, right?
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
It's to prevent severe disease, which we don't have data for that for kids. But I guess to me, the risk-benefit calculation looks like this. If the vaccines are safe and the side effects are things like fatigue and headache and muscle soreness at the injection site, I would much rather deal with that for a day or not at all. I mean, most people actually have no side effects. And so I would much rather deal with side effects like that, but understanding that we're giving something that is safe and that can prevent the possibility of something horrible from happening, which is every parent's worst nightmare.
The question asked by the presenter was that because children really weren't dying from COVID, why give them a vax and risk any sort of side effects and things from the vax? And she, of course, said that there was no real side effects from the vax, which we now know is completely false, right? And we know that kids, there's something like 1,500 kids or less than that was the official statistics on the CDC died from COVID. Many of them had severe health issues going into the disease, right? So what she said here is, that she's saying, well, your worst nightmare is your kid's going to die. Again, putting the fear out there. There is a positive association with the word safe. Advertisers and presenters use the word safe to get people to buy their products. Safety is a big thing with people. And when they're scared of something like they were of COVID, and they were offered something that would keep them and their family safe, and they withheld information or out and out lied or, just made false claims with no scientific basis and saying this would keep you safe, then people went and got the vax. And now we know that things are different. And so all these lies and deceptions, and she had the nerve to say the unvaccinated can't be trusted, right? And so the other piece to this, which we now know, and both Bill Gates, I have the memes here, I've saved these things, and Fauci have both admitted that COVID wasn't beaten by the vaccine. The idea that the vaccine would give herd immunity and COVID would disappear because everyone would be vaccinated and they wouldn't get COVID because they had the vaccine, and then, it would just disappear because no one would have it and they couldn't pass it on to other people. This idea of herd immunity through vaccination. We now know that COVID mutated itself out of existence, or mutated itself into a more safer, more contagious form, and that everyone had ended up getting it anyway. So the vaccine turned out to be relatively unnecessary based in what these guys are saying here.
In beating COVID-19,
Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B cell and T cell immunity, and it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines.
I think what one referred to, what was not anticipated, was the extent of the mutations and the amino acid substitutions in Omicron, which is really unprecedented. It kind of came out of nowhere, where you have a virus that has 50 mutations, 30 of which are in the spike protein and 10 or 12 of which are in the receptor binding domain. The thing that's important is that it appears to be able to evade some of the immune protection of things like monoclonal antibodies, convalescent plasma, and the antibodies that are induced by vaccines. That's the sobering news against severe disease. But when you get to Omicron, the protection significantly goes down.
Keeping the events that are safe and also the events that have fun for people too. We can't be canceling everything, especially if we're going to be living with COVID for the foreseeable future. I would say that if you choose to go, make sure that you're vaccinated and boosted. Make sure that you're wearing a mask, even though it's outdoors. If there are lots of people packed around you, wearing a 3-ply surgical mask. Don't wear a cloth mask. Cloth masks are little more than facial decorations. There's no place for them in light of Omicron. And so wear a high-quality mask, at least a 3-ply surgical mask. And if you're going to be visiting elderly relatives.
Recently, when you said here on CNN that cloth masks were, quote, little more than facial decorations. So, in light of Omicron, what kind of mask should we all be wearing? And were you surprised by the pushback from your comments?
Well, I was surprised because this is not the first time that I or Professor Osterholm or really any of us public health experts have been saying that cloth masks are not appropriate for this pandemic. It's not appropriate for Omicron. It was not appropriate for Delta, Alpha, or any of the previous variants either, because we're dealing with something that's airborne. We're dealing with a virus that's extremely contagious. At the very beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know about masking. And then we didn't have enough masks, enough high-quality masks for healthcare workers. And so we were trying to ration those. But then pretty quickly, we recognized that COVID is airborne.
Do you agree with the move?
I do. There was and is a time and place for pandemic restrictions, but when they were put in, it was always with the understanding that they would be removed as soon as we can. And in this case, circumstances have changed. Case counts are declining. Also, the science has changed, but rather that the responsibility should shift from a government mandate imposed from the state or the local district of the school. Rather, it should shift to an individual responsibility by the family, who can still decide that their child can wear a mask if needed.
Take New Jersey, the case in New Jersey, for instance. Their new case average is just over 4,000. Is that an acceptable number to do this, or are they projecting out to March 7th at this point?
I don't think we should be looking at case counts at all at this point, especially when we're dealing with a milder variant and when so many people were exposed to Omicron and therefore have at least some level of protection either through vaccination or immunity. The key number that we should be looking at is hospitalizations. If our ICUs and hospitals in that particular region are not overwhelmed, if they're not over capacity, we can set a number, for example, 75% or 80% full, then we should be able to relax all restrictions. And I actually believe that we should be starting to, with the first restriction removed, should actually be the restriction on children. Because while for adults, you could say, well, what's the harm of adults masking when they go into a grocery store? There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. That doesn't mean that masking doesn't have its place for children when there are very high rates of hospitalization. If we get a new variant in the future that children are particularly susceptible to, we may want to bring masks back. But we should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, people with English as a second language, children with learning disabilities. There has been a cost to them. So the risk-benefit calculation has really changed.
But she's had the flu for 14 days. Should she get a flu shot?
Well, no. If she got the flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And
so
she should not get it?
If she really has the flu, she definitely doesn't need a flu vaccine. if she really has the flu.
She should not get it again.
No,
this
she
year?
doesn't need it because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection. And they have very short duration, particularly in the people who matter, which are old people.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
All right, before I comment on the rest of the compilation, what you're seeing now, the images from now on, I'm going to play it on a loop. And it's, I think, 6 different things or more, I don't know. Died Suddenly, whatever it is, Died Suddenly International. And it's an Instagram group that one of my viewers sent to me. And it's listing all the people who died suddenly, this phenomenon that's going on worldwide. And it's quite substantial. It's something I cover on my other channel with the Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. And there are, every day I was covering it, every other day for a while, and then every day again. And there's stories every day of people dropping like flies, having cardiac arrests, many of them, having strokes, significant health issues that's increased dramatically. Like, no one can really deny it. I mean, they can, but, it's ridiculous, right? Then I Googled the term. This is Google's own results, right? Google. Died suddenly. First, just in their, all, in their all category, and then in their news category, and it just goes on forever. It's a term, died suddenly, died unexpectedly. This is a new reality that we live in. Then also I have what's called heart-safe schools, which is something that's sweeping around the country because young kids in high school and even elementary school are having heart attacks, cardiac arrest. And so they've developed this term, heart-safe school. And then I show you defibrillators. They're putting defibrillators everywhere in universities in America. I mean, the search results, the Google results were mostly from America and England, but it's something that's happening in places all over the world, I assume, where they're putting defibrillators in because people are just dropping like flies. They're having heart attacks, young kids on college campuses and schools. And so now there's defibrillators in all these places, right? And this should act as some sense of, okay, something's changed, right? Is it COVID? Is it the vaccine? Is it 5G? Or is it something else? When you have a new condition, right? When you have a new normal and it has to do with health, and you have young kids who are dropping like flies, who are, having cardiac arrest and myocarditis and heart issues, and people having stroke and Bell's palsy and all these, symptoms and things that we've seen. I mean, Bell's palsy has been reported as a side effect of the vaccines. It's undeniable that the world is no longer safe, right? Putting defibrillators in various places. We saw what happened with Damar Hamlin. They needed to do CPR and use a defibrillator on him. They have to have defibrillators now because young people on the field, the athletic field, will have a cardiac arrest. We've seen it. And so that's not safe, right? The world isn't a safer place if they're putting defibrillators in schools. They're making schools safe, and they're, increasing training and equipment to ensure that if some kid has cardiac arrest, that people know what to do because it's that common. It's that frequent, right? Again, this is a constant reminder as I finish this up of what's happened in our world, what's going on. An unsafe condition, YouTube. This isn't safe, right? I mean, compared to my posting a couple of video clips of doctors voicing an opinion or a, assessment, a diagnosis of what they see, or reporting things that disagree with the official story, that's unsafe, but putting defibrillators in and these conditions that have now occurred is safe. Is that, I mean, this is what YouTube is saying. That's gaslighting. it's also abusive, right? And let's get into it here. So I want to go through this slowly. Like I said, I finished this video last night. I didn't, like the way it was going because I had a headache and I was just tired. I had to make dinner, and I already created 2 hours of content. So I want to take my time with this. I'm making a much longer video. I put in more in terms of my compilation. Like I want to exhaust all of it, right? I want everything that I have about this, as much as I can, put into this thing that I'm saying here. First of all, it was much more understandable, the idea that to keep everybody safe, there were these ideas out there that the vaccine was some sort of miracle drug, which you can see in my compilation. Joe Biden said that you weren't going to get COVID. If you got it, you weren't going to have a severe case. And if you got a severe case, you weren't going to go to the hospital. If you went to the hospital, there was almost no chance of you dying. And all that turned out to be blatantly false, right? So they also said the vaccine had no side effects. They said the side effects are minimal and, there's not much risk. I hope I got that in the compilation. I know I showed that somewhere. I didn't watch all the compilation because I've seen it so much, right? But I hope I put it in there. But Fauci and other people said the risk of side effects are so insignificant. And, there was this miracle drug that was not only going to prevent you from getting COVID, but was going to prevent people who the vaccine wouldn't really do anything because they have compromised immune systems, older people. And eventually it would build herd immunity and it would get rid of COVID. And so the policy was that this was a crisis and there needed to be all hands on deck, right? There couldn't be any people out there not participating in this. So they tried to make the vaccines mandatory, which was now deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. That's been reversed. And they did this, in various levels in different states. Different companies forced their employees to get the vax. And social media companies were pressured to keep out what was called dangerous disinformation and conspiracy theories about the vaccine. And so that everyone would have one set of information, a singular voice that would say that the vaccine was safe, effective, and everyone needed to get it. And people who didn't get it were bad people, right? And that turned out to be false, which we all know now. We know it's false. Like, that wasn't true. That was not true at all, right? All of it. Like, there was, some of it was maybe a little bit partially true. Some of it was more or less true, but that was what was said. So I understood YouTube's policies and Facebook policies and Twitter's policy, social media policy. I didn't agree with it because I knew personally that what they were saying is untrue. And when Jojo Mugu says that it prevents people from getting COVID and all these other people said it, and then Pfizer comes out and says, no, we never tested for that. So there was no scientific validation of that point. And so people were going to get COVID, which they did. There were so many crossover cases. People were going to get hospitalized with the vaccine, and they were going to die from COVID with the vaccine. So all those things turned out to be blatantly false, right? And so censoring people, telling them that they couldn't voice their objections and their other opinions. Some of the people were medical people that, didn't believe in these vaccines, right? And these vaccines were experimental. I'm not even putting in the, Trump claiming it was his. I have a whole bunch of memes of Trump saying they were his vaccines, right? Where he says he was the father of these vaccines or whatever it was, right? And so, those memes exist. I mean, I have them and other people, right? I mean, those, clips of Tim saying that. And there was that as well. It was rushed out. It was called Operation Warp Speed. It wasn't tested, in a way that, sometimes vaccines take 5, 7, 10 years to be, considered safe for the market, right? And some of the side effects they weren't going to see for years and years, as Fauci said. A younger Fauci said, you might not see side effects for 10 or 11 years. And so all of that information was left out. And Pfizer did not, the pharmaceutical companies did not advertise these vaccines. They were pushed out on social media by social media celebrities and by Hollywood celebrities and by politicians, and they were made mandatory. But there was no ad from Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson, because when you place an ad for a pharmaceutical drug, you also have to list its side effects. and they were unwilling to do that, right? Which we still don't know, because now they're just starting to leak out that there was these, issues with it. And the virus was mutating, and the vaccine was becoming less and less effective. And so ultimately, we now know from Bill Gates and other people who have admitted this, that Omicron became, far more contagious and far less deadly. And so coronavirus, so COVID, eventually mutated itself out of existence. There was no herd immunity. The vaccine didn't do what any of the things that they promised that it would, right? And now we're dealing with side effects. Now we're dealing with a new reality where young people are dropping like dead. Their hearts are stopping, not just heart attacks, but heart failure, cardiac arrest, where their hearts just stop. It's a new reality. So much so that all the stuff you're looking at now, people dropping like flies, died suddenly, and defibrillators and all this rest of this stuff, right? Heart safe schools. It's all a part of that. So we now know that what was told and the principles behind this mass censorship, right? Because not only we're not able to say anything negative about the vaccines or the masks or anything to do with any of these policies, which again, they came out and said, oh, we were wrong about this, or it's accepted they were, wrong. But also we weren't able to say what we did. Now I had COVID, then I had Omicron, and then I had the most recent version of that. My health wasn't great before. My immune system was down. I'm in my late 50s, and I was just worn out, went through a divorce, and so I knew my immune system wasn't as good as it should be. But after I got the first COVID, it was down to like a 1 or a 2. And I just was like wrecked after the first COVID. I had blood work done, and I, went to this holistic chiropractor, and I started, getting, various types of, I'd always taken herbs and things, and I, did all these types of supplements and other things. And I've learned a lot in terms of my own, personal situation, because everyone has a different body type, and we all have things that work for us that might not work for somebody else. And I can say now I'm in stronger and better health. My energy level has returned, but it was a long, crappy battle. And eventually I'm going to make some sort of audio book, hopefully. I don't say eventually because I say these things and I never get around to doing them, on Amazon. But wouldn't it be helpful if I could have helped people who had similar body types or would have benefited from the information? Again, I don't recommend things. I don't tell people what to do. I don't even recommend them. I say, this is what I do. This is what helped me. And I share information so people can make their own decisions, right? That everyone needs to learn to make their own decisions, because you can't trust people because people are liars. You can't trust businesses. Not just in terms of, there's so many people in the so-called truth community that just lie. There's so many people that just make things up and share them. The internet is saturated with lies, and everyone has an agenda and all these things, right? So we all have to sift through the BS, the bull boop, and we all have to sit through it, right? And figure out what we need to do. And I've talked about having to read the ingredients, how exhausting it is to read the ingredients of everything. And I don't mean just food. I mean everything in life, because people lie to you all the time, and we live in a deceptive system. And so you always have to read the ingredients, and it's exhausting. Wouldn't it be so much better if we could trust the medical community, or we could trust the media, or we could trust the politicians? But none of those things are true. Or we could just trust our people in our lives, right? But everyone's lying and manipulating, and we've become really weak and despicable in our character qualities and all this thing. Disconnected from God. My channels, I always talk about connecting to God internally as being, a big part of this. And so what we have now is the religion of science, where some people like Fauci or Bill Gates or these various agencies, CDC and all these agencies, WHO, they are the interpreters of science, because most of us haven't been trained to either gather raw data and or analyze the raw data. Very few people can do that. Like, I can't do it, and then I have no interest in it, right? I just, I don't have the inclination to do that, right? So I have to use something else, which is my heart. I have to use my heart, the etheric heart, as a instrument, as well as my ability to recognize patterns. And I also have to judge people and institutions based in my ability to read them through my psychological training, my spiritual training. And that's how I make my decisions. And I've been, I have a pretty good record in the later half of my life of making good decisions based in all of this, right? And being right, like so many people have watched my videos, and I don't want to say predict things, but say things, and they happen exactly the way I say they're going to happen, right? Because I've developed a system. Each person has to do that, though. That's my system. You have to figure out your system, right? Each person. As you get older, it's something, more difficult when you're young, but you have to figure it out. But right now, instead of the religion of religion, we have the religion of science. Because back when I grew up, the religious right dominated all these types of things. You couldn't say anything about religion. You couldn't, disparage religion as the authority. Religion has been the authority for a number of years. And science was slowly creeping up and taking, over some of the power from religion for some people and in some, levels of society. But there was a significant change when COVID hit, when the, powers that be said, okay, you can't go to churches anymore because your fake God can't help you with this. You need science. And they said science now is the new religion. And I call it the new religion because it's not actual science. It's pseudoscience because most of the stuff they presented wasn't scientific. They had some data, at least that's what they claimed, and they had the ability to read the data. We didn't. And they imposed restrictions and made up, rules and things like this based in that data or their interpretation, just like the old clergy used to interpret the Bible, or in some other country they interpreted whatever, the Quran, or the Gita, or whatever it might be, right? Whatever religious text dominates that religion. And there's some people who were better at that than others, and they could tell us based in their authority. Their authority was God. Now the modern day scientists, their authority is science, but it turned out to be failed science, right? Because they got so much wrong. It didn't go any way like they said it was going to go. And then now you had this vaccine, and everybody, 80% of the people got at least one shot. 70% of the people were fully, vaccinated, almost 70%. And so were there side effects? Well, there are. We're seeing them now. And so all these social media giants and all these people, they have blood on their hands for all those people who are suffering because of the vaccine, and plus the misinterpretation of science, the inflated claims. Dr. Leanna Wen, who was a shill for the current, for the movement of the, she called, anti-vaxxers, they can't be trusted, all these things, now has reversed her position. She said that the death count was inflated. They said that, it came out, it was there all along on the CDC website, that of 95% of the deaths, the people had 4 or more comorbidities. That was the average. So they died of other things with COVID, but they were counted as COVID deaths. And Dr. Leanna Wen now has reversed herself in all these. She was considered an expert and went on CNN, these other shows. And there's other, people, Bill Gates, are all backing away from the original claims. And so everybody who pushed for this and didn't allow people to get all the information, excluded information, there's blood on your hands. That's evil. That's evil, Google. That's evil, YouTube, right? That's evil, Twitter and Facebook and all these, institutions. I know they were pressured, but at least you can say, okay, we didn't know. Like, we tried something. We went with a plan. We tried to get all hands on deck. We said this was going to work. We thought it was going to work, whatever it was. And we didn't want any naysayers, so we took a drastic, measures to censor everybody, to, again, I don't want to call it censorship because these are private companies, but to exclude information from people. And, again, in order to keep everybody safe, that was the idea. But you didn't keep everyone safe because people still got COVID, died from COVID, and now they have also the side effects from vaccines that they are dealing with, right? But now you know better, so much so that the community guidelines standards, I mean, Twitter now, Elon Musk is letting people say whatever, and the community guideline standards have loosened up on YouTube and Facebook, so they know that they were wrong, because they know that they were things that they said were dangerous wasn't really dangerous. That you gave community guideline strikes for things that wasn't really dangerous, and things that you promoted were false and dangerous, right? Turned out to be dangerous because now there are side effects and things, and there's, a lot of issues going on where died suddenly is, and this is just, what the mainstream media is willing to admit to, the mainstream story, but we know there's so much information that they won't let out there. There was a woman my wife was telling me about, and she had some kind of Twitter feed where she was documenting all the people who were claiming to be vaccinated injured that had side effects. And it wasn't, certainly as bad as myocarditis. Some of the things are lesser things, double periods and things that women were having, menstrual cycle issues, which now is being admitted to, things like that. And she was banned from Twitter, but she kept on doing her research, and now she has thousands of tweets that she wants to post that they've loosened these restrictions. And so you've admitted you were wrong because you're opening these things up now, and, you were wrong. Like, everyone knows that the official story didn't, the experts didn't deliver. They made promises that turned out not to be true. They said things were going to happen that didn't happen, and now they're suffering as a result. People are unsafe as a result of all of this stuff. So it's abusive. It was abusive. It was wrong. It was gaslighting, right? It was all of these things. It was evil. This is, again, evil when you're completely wrong about something and you do something that promotes suffering and puts people in an unsafe position. And that's what YouTube did. But at least there was some level of excuse because you could say, we don't know what's going to happen. At least we could say, this is, you didn't have the evidence that you now have. Now we know what's happened, and there's no excuse for censorship like this, right? When I, just present things that are an alternative opinion to the powers that be, and I'm a lot more right than the mainstream media and the mainstream story and the mainstream everything, right? I was a lot more right in my decision making. We're being vindicated. The anti-vax people are being vindicated by all the things that are happening. And whether people want to admit that or not, it's true, right? There was an article in a story that said there's blood on anti-vaxxers' hands because they knew and they didn't tell us. And we tried to tell you, and you didn't want to listen, and we were censored. And so we were right and you were wrong. And there could be another thing that happened just like this and will be censored and demonized the same exact way. You haven't learned from your mistake. I can understand you make a mistake, YouTube, right? But you haven't learned from it. You haven't, or maybe you've learned from it, you've refused to admit to it because of the corporate pressures and all these things, which is, again, evil. That's evil. It's evil to not own up to and apologize for what you did. And the way we were treated, we were ostracized. We were a targeted group. Look at all the targeted groups, the disenfranchised groups, the protected groups on YouTube, and we should be among them. And by our choice, by what we identify as, by our, the groups that now we've been placed in, because we are, against the official story, we have been right so much. I'm not talking about the crazy people or the shills or the QBs or the Trumpers or any of these, dopes that are out there. Reasonable people that are mature and have some wisdom and have some skills in evaluating the BS and coming up with, a better choices, right? Better understanding of what's going on. But instead of saying, all right, these guys were right, let's maybe let them be free to express themselves because, we have value. You have placed us in this group, allowed people to demonize us and bully us, say that we're, horrible people, murderers even, right? That's what's been said about us. And so, again, why are we a protected group? Why is some, like I've said this over and over again, if you're against a behavior, you're against that behavior in all forms. And so to allow, one group to be demonized and that group turns out to be right, and because of that group being demonized, people were put in an unsafe position where they were going along with something that turned out not to be true, that now has put them in jeopardy physically and other ways, then, maybe you would change everything that you're doing and look at, this would be like an existential crisis for these social media giants where they say, all right, we got it completely wrong. We're going to do better now, especially since you're YouTube. You're all of us. You're not them tube, you're YouTube, right? But you didn't do that. And now you're still, imposing these ridiculous community guideline strikes. It's embarrassing, right? You're embarrassing yourself. Like everyone else knows. Like you know yourself, right? So why are you doing this? And most people understand that this was wrong and you effed up, right? It's okay to F up, but it's not okay to keep on doing it after you know you were wrong and you hurt people. You weren't a safe place. The way you handled the COVID restrictions, the community guidelines, and censored people turned out to be not safe, and it hurt people. There's blood on your hands. You hurt people. There's no question about it. And again, I've been a good partner to YouTube. I've been a better partner to them than they have to me. Partnerships, abusive relationships, whatever it is. Like I've said, I listed all the ways YouTube has benefited from me, and I'm grateful for all the things that I've, benefited from with YouTube. I've been positive about YouTube much more so than other people, right? I have the whole, the YouTube subscription. I have YouTube TV. I'm a customer as well as a person who has brought in revenue for YouTube. A partnership where YouTube has made hundreds of thousands of dollars off of my videos, maybe even more. Maybe, I don't even know how much, right? I produce content every day. And again, it's been a productive relationship for me. But the way you've treated me here, and again, I'm not a victim. This isn't about me. I don't care. Like, I'm over it, right? Like, I've had community guidelines before, strikes, whatever. I know how to deal with it and whatever it is, right? I'll survive this thing. But, it says, what about you? It's gaslighting, it's abusive, and evil. All of those things. Demonic? I don't know. What other words could you use here? And so, is this what you're about? Like, you this liberal woke consciousness where it's okay to treat certain people like this, the ones that you deem as being, whatever, undesirable. People who have helped build this platform with their, alternative media channels and all this stuff that helped build this platform. So what do you stand for, right? If you don't stand for this here, then what do you stand for, right? I mean, what are you about? Like as a corporation, like, what are you going to do in the future? All of it, right? And this is, an avenue for people to express the truth in a government in a world full of lies, right? Express their truth. It might not be the truth, but it's their truth. That's what people find compelling about it. People honestly expressing themselves in various ways, artistic ways. It's a beautiful thing. And, why kill that, right? Why disparage that? Why, censor that? Like, just let the information flow and let people make up their own minds. What's more safe than that, right? Including all information. And again, not anything that's disparaging or whatever it is, or, whatever, you want to call it, but allow the information to flow. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.